Hey kiddos, we're moving on to Act 3 of Romeo and Juliet this week. I am not providing you with a scene by scene summary paper, but if you would like to continue to do that as you read, you absolutely can. I think it's a great idea so that you remember what the plot is as you move forward. My guided reading worksheets for this week are more detailed than they have been in the sense that they'll help us kind of track the plot as we work through it. Also, because of when I'm able to film this, I'm just going to have to do the entire worksheet in one video. And so hopefully you can just pause it and rewind it as you need to have it be helpful for your reading. But the first part of the worksheet is going to have us review a little bit and then we'll move forward with some new information. So Act 3 represents which part of the 5-part plot structure. And so we're talking about this part that we did in class, and we're right here, 1, 2, 3, Act 3. So that is the climax. So this is the moment of highest tension when we're going to figure out how each, in this case, Shakespeare layers his conflicts. So how each of the conflicts is going to turn out. So this question is asking us, what are the conflicts that have been established already through Act 1 and Act 2? So the main conflict that the whole play centers around is the Montague, I always spell their name wrong, and Capulet families are waging a long-standing feud. And then one of the conflicts that is coming out of this is Romeo angered Tybalt at the Capulet ball, which reignited conflict between families. Not to mention the opening scene conflict between the serving people on both sides. So there's conflict number 1. Conflict number 2 is that Romeo and Juliet, I'll do it in order of importance. Romeo and Juliet have met and fallen in love, but also learned their families are enemies. Then the third conflict that's been established in the first 2 acts is that Paris has asked for Juliet's hand in marriage, which is a conflict for a lot of different reasons. Juliet's not that interested in marriage. Her dad at this point is not interested in it because she's so young. And then later, the conflict that creates will multiply and intensify. Okay, so in Act 3, Scene 1, we're going to focus on sacrifice by paraphrasing things that are occurring in this scene, just to be a good teacher and make sure I'm focusing in here. Paraphrasing is a huge part of what we do during Romeo and Juliet. Paraphrasing is the idea where you take the original words that an author has said, and then in your own words, you summarize the author's intent and meaning. So it's not translation, like you can't do it word for word, but it does require you to understand the original text in a deep enough way that you can explain it, like I said, in your own words. So we're going to be doing a lot of practicing of this on this worksheet. That is the basis of the questions on part 1 of the Romeo and Juliet Act 2 and 3 quiz that you're going to take, the part that's multiple choice. 14, actually, no, 15 of the 15 points that you'll earn for that quiz are directly related to items that we're paraphrasing here. So the work that you're doing here is preparing you for the quiz and should make it a lot easier when you're ready to take it. So again, paraphrasing, taking the intention and meaning of an author's original words, but then putting them into your own. So we're going to use that skill to look at the sacrifices made in Act 3, Scene 1, and explain what those sacrifices are revealing about the characters' values, the people who are making the sacrifice. So I'm actually going to keep this in mind, and then we'll answer these three questions because they'll allow us to kind of talk about like the plot of the scene. Then we can come back here and delve into what has been sacrificed. So in this scene, Romeo is fresh from falling in love, right? And like meeting Juliet. And so his friends are waiting to see him. And Tybalt has challenged him to a duel. And this is something that would have been a big deal during this time period in terms of the expectation of Romeo as part of the Montague family to step up to the challenge, and that his performance in the duel would be representative of his entire family. So the honor and pride that that response to a request to a duel requires, like in terms of what society and what his family would expect, and certainly what his friends expect from him. Um, so Tybalt arrives on the scene before Romeo, um, and he incites aggravation from Mercutio because in Act 3, Scene 1, Tybalt basically uses some language that's meant to rile everyone up because he's not getting what he wants, right? Like he wants to speak directly to Romeo and he's not quite there yet. And he has Mercutio, who we already see like he always makes things worse, right? Like when the nurse comes by, he's like teasing her about how ugly her face is. So it's just part of his personality. But here in Act 3, Scene 1, at line 45, Mercutio's more lightheartedly playing with him. Could you not take some occasion without giving it? Kind of just like making a fool of him by misusing his words. Tybalt gets serious here and says, Mercutio, thou consortest with Romeo. And you see here by his reply, the issue is the language that Tybalt uses here by saying the word consort. Consort implies there's a connotation that you are from lower class society, you are maybe like a criminal or someone who doesn't deserve respect. And so he picks, and Tybalt undoubtedly means to use this word on purpose in order to disrespect Romeo and Mercutio in turn. But Mercutio is not having it, right? What dost thou make us minstrels, and thou make minstrels of us? Look to hear nothing but discords. Here's my fiddlestick. Here's that shall make you dance. Zounds, consorts. And again, at the end of his quote, he goes back to that word that he has such an issue with that Tybalt uses in the first place. So this is the scene in which things are aggravated. And then eventually Romeo comes in and Tybalt ceases his kind of messing with Mercutio because Romeo's there and that's who he's really after. So here there is a full altercation and Mercutio gets involved. We'll talk about that because we'll talk about his sacrifice. And so there's fighting between Mercutio and Tybalt, Romeo refusing to fight. And then as Romeo, this is like a whole discussion, but as Romeo involves himself in the altercation between Mercutio and Tybalt, Mercutio is what would the right word be? Wounded, but he is stabbed by Tybalt. And so we watch him respond to his injury, right? Benvolio realizing that he's been hurt, and Mercutio replying, I, a scratch. Mary, 'tis enough. Like brushing it off. And then Romeo, Mercutio's his best friend. So he's like, hey, like, are you really legitimately okay? Or, is this a problem here? And so he says, no, 'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough, 'twill serve. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. And so let's talk a little bit about what Mercutio is saying in those lines. So
Mommy.
no, okay, I'm gonna have a second video. Hold on one second.